a Russian spy ship is being tracked by the Royal Navy as it sails through the English Channel. This is according to Defence Secretary John Healey. He says he's issued a stark warning to Vladimir Putin saying, "We see you," and promised robust action to protect Britain. It comes as US President Donald Trump issued a warning to the Russian president to bring an end to the war in Ukraine. Let's get a word from Cormac Smith, former Ukraine Foreign Minister advisor. Cormac, afternoon to you. Mr. Trump, of course, made a lot of noise about this, initially saying, "I'll have this thing solved in 24 hours." That was an aspiration. I'm not expecting him to, but it can be solved. Is there any hope that Mr. Trump being in office is the answer to the problem?
Ian, lovely to see you. I haven't spoken to you in a while.
No, indeed.
Look, I think I do have some hope about Trump being in office. And, the morning after he was elected, well, I've said two things last year. The beginning of last year, I said that I firmly believe that America as a reliable security partner was most likely lost as we had known America for the recent decades in Europe. And Europe needed to wake up and stand on our own 2 feet. That leads into greater defense spending and so forth. We can discuss that. But also, and I thought that could be a silver lining in the election of Donald Trump, because quite frankly, I don't think he can do any worse than the recent Biden administration have done, who have significantly let Ukraine down.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that Donald Trump seems to have changed his tune. He initially talked about ending this war in 24 hours. And what we've heard from him recently is a lot more circumspect. And he is talking about the first 100 days. And he is certainly talking about a deal needs to be done and so forth. But I take it as hopeful that he made this first statement. He addressed Vladimir Putin and told him he needed to make a deal rather than addressing Zelensky. And one other thing that I would say, somebody was saying the other day that Boris Johnson, who may have been in Donald Trump's ear, and we do believe that Boris Johnson has Donald Trump's ear. And, whatever else one might want to say about Boris Johnson, he was a fantastic supporter of Ukraine and is recognized as such out there. So I am hopeful, but, Donald Trump is famously unpredictable and transactional. I think as part of whatever deal is done, I think a lot more lies on our shoulders in Europe. I think we need to really step up our spending. Trump has indicated 5%. I think that's his opening bid, but certainly we're talking about a minimum of 3%, which is quite far away from where our government is at the moment.
Yeah. Do you sense that Mr. Putin would listen to Donald Trump?
I hope not, because if he doesn't, he may well incur the wrath of Donald Trump. And I think there's a great chance that Putin will not listen to Donald Trump, and that he may get things very, very wrong. And we should remember that the tables are turned since the last time Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin sat down together. That was in 2019. At the time, Donald Trump was under a huge amount of pressure. He was being indicted, and Putin was flying high. Donald Trump has never, like it or not, been more powerful than he is today, with both houses of government and the majority across the country, and having swept the swing states. He is in a massively powerful position, with an army at his disposal that spends as much as the next 10 armies on earth combined. So I think if Putin does not bend the knee to Donald Trump, which I think and hope he's unlikely to do, I think he could incur the wrath of Donald Trump. But as you know, as a friend and supporter of Ukraine, that's probably my hope.
Yeah. On that point of hope, because we all retain some of that, this has been bloody, it's been vicious, it's been, horrendous to see on European soil something like this happen. What is your best assessment of what you think might happen over maybe the 100 days, or certainly in the near future, Cormac?
Oh, I find this difficult, Ian, because I I'm very maximalist, and I believe that any deal which leaves any Ukrainian territory in Russian hands, and we need to remind ourselves that Russia currently holds about 20% of Ukraine. That's an area roughly the size of England. Probably hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian civilians and soldiers have been killed. Whole cities have been effectively wiped off the face of the map, and there have been the most, horrendous cases of rape, torture, murder, kidnap of children. The list goes on and on, well documented up to United Nations level. So any land that's left in Russian hands will gift to Russia the natural resources that land is rich in. It will leave the Ukrainian people in those occupied territories at the continuing mercy of Russian barbarism. And we know that Putin negotiates in bad faith and always breaks his word when it comes to Ukraine. So there is no doubt that if we simply freeze the lines or whatever, that Putin will lick his wounds. He badly needs this opportunity to do so because he has the Russian economy is in free fall, and he has his losses are over 800,000 either killed or seriously maimed and wounded at the moment. It's horrendous. But, if that is the case, if it's a less than a maximal settlement, I think Putin will spin it to his people very, very easily and successfully as a Russian victory. And, we have been reminded by our top generals and top diplomats, both current and former, that we need to be ready to fight a war with Russia by the end of the decade. Yeah. And I always quote General Sir Roland Walker, who's the current head of the British Army, who said just before Christmas, the British Army is not ready to fight. And if we're not ready to fight, we're not ready to deter. And, Britain spends more on defense than most countries across Europe. It is only the countries in the eastern neighborhood, the Baltics and Poland, who are spending at or above the 3%, which is now being talked about as an absolute minimum. So I'm concerned. I'm not just concerned for Ukraine and my friends there, but I am concerned for Europe. Europe really needs to stand up and come together and face down this threat, because Uncle Sam may not be there for us in the future.
That's a fair point. Does it have to end? Does Ukraine have to end where, which often seems to be the case in these kind of standoff situations, where both sides feel they have victory? Is that the kind of layman's answer to this? They've both got to feel, Putin's got to feel he got something, Zelensky and the Ukrainian people have got to feel that they got something too. Is that how it's likely to pan out ultimately?
It may pan out that way, but, if I can say it's not the way I think it should pan out. And, this point that all wars end at the negotiation table, no, they don't. The Second World War, which was against an absolute evil, ended in the defeat of Adolf Hitler and Nazism. And a smaller and more recent war, the Falklands War, did not end around the negotiating table. It ended in absolute defeat of the Argentinian junta and their surrender. So I think that anything less than driving Russia off Ukrainian land, which they have absolutely no right to take, apart from the horrible atrocities that they have carried out there, not for 3 years, for 10 years, Ian, remember, actually going on 11 years since this war began with the annexation of Crimea and the invasion of the Donbass. And atrocities have been going on since then. So, anything which concedes, and we've got to ask ourselves, why should we concede? If 20 or 25% of England, take some of the southern counties, were invaded, cities wiped off the face of the map, and our people were treated in the horrendous way with rape of women, children, babies, torture, all the horrible, horrible things that I can enumerate that are well documented. How would we in Britain feel about a compromise deal that said, well, I don't know, whatever country had invaded us, maybe the French, I'm joking, but I'm making a example. How would we feel about saying, they must be able to walk away feeling they've got something? This is an absolute war between good and evil. And I'm afraid if we do go for a compromise which Russia can spin as a victory, I have a saying, it's our money and guns today, and I think we need to pour a lot more into Ukraine now, or it's our daughters and sons tomorrow. Because again, to quote one more person, Mark Rutte, the new Secretary General of NATO, made a very, very important speech on the 12th of December. And that was where he talked about the minimum of 3%. But he said, you know, if we don't do this now, it's going to cost us much, much, much more. And I counted 3 muches.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't have a crystal ball, Ian. I have my fears, and my fears is that there will be some sort of a very unjust compromise that will leave some sort of a victory to Putin. That's very unjust, and that will cost not just Ukraine, that'll cost all of us tomorrow.
Yeah. Cormac, thank you as ever. Really good to speak again as well. Cormac Smith, he was the former advisor to the Ukrainian foreign minister. Thank you to him.